G'day guys, welcome back to Beyond This World. My name is Bailey. Today we're looking at who is George Zinn. This guy, he is sort of known to be the false suspect of the Charlie Kirk shooting, but there was a deeper, darker side to him that was later uncovered by a couple of independent researchers on YouTube and on X. So let's dive in to what this man, James Lee, has to say.
Tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. And so many questions still remain. The biggest of which, was his death an act of a deranged lone gunman, or perhaps a dark conspiracy to eliminate one of the most influential political operators in America? And one of the keys to finding that answer is this man, George Zinn.
On the day of Charlie Kirk's assassination, immediately George Zinn gets up and says, I did it. And he kind of gets dragged. Well, apparently George Zinn had to receive medical treatment following that little fracas. And he told multiple nurses and doctors that he did it because he was being paid to do it. He said he had not been paid yet, but he was going to receive payment. He didn't know from who. That's interesting. Decoy boy told medical staff, apparently he was just singing, just telling everybody who would listen that he did it because payment was going to be promised to him if he did do it. What does that tell us?
Well, Candace, what that tells us is that this reaction that he had immediately after Kirk was publicly executed, standing up and waving his arms while everyone was ducking down like a normal human being, that was not an accident. Those are the actions indicative of someone who was exactly where they were supposed to be, and perhaps, as she claimed, paid to be there. The mainstream media has already confirmed part of the story here for us. Quote, a 71-year-old man who was briefly detained moments after the assassination of Charlie Kirk tried to help the suspected gunman escape by faking a confession, authorities say. Utah County Sheriff Michael Smith said George Zinn admitted to the police that he had yelled that he was the shooter to allow the actual suspect to flee. Why would he do something like that? Did someone pay him like Candace is claiming? And if so, who? And just as we started asking those kinds of questions, all of a sudden we hear that George Zinn was charged.
That literally looks like a mask. That looks like one of those rubber masks that you see off like a movie like Bad Grandpa with Johnny Knoxville. Like that just, it doesn't look real. I mean, obviously the eyes, but the whole face, it just looks like it's one of those fake masks, you know what I mean? Very strange, very strange.
With possessing child porn. It's almost as if they didn't want us to ask any more questions about him, right? He's a creep, he's a weirdo, stop talking about him, there's nothing more to see here, let's move on. Grok, this is very interesting, even found, quote, circumstantial evidence that George Zinn's historical online footprint, particularly older clips and articles tying him to events like 9/11 and political campaigns, was made harder to access in the days immediately following Charlie Kirk's assassination on September 10th, 2025. Why? What the heck is going on here? Why was his 9/11 testimony deleted? Was it because maybe he talked about how he knew that Al-Qaeda was somehow responsible for the 9/11 attacks the moment he saw the towers fall, even before the press had even announced anything to the public?
Jack, we did have some idea, there was something going on because we dealt with Bin Laden before in separate instances, so we did suspect that it was Al-Qaeda involved in that.
Very weird why he would even be in a documentary like that. And also, I know the feds are kind of still catching up on this reality that the internet just can't be deleted. Speaking of which, I was also able to dig up the audio file from this podcast episode, which for some reason, as you can see there, has mysteriously vanished from the internet. And let me tell you, it was a wild episode to say the least. And let's just say George is not at all as they make him seem, okay? They've made him out to be this crazy kook, this so-called political gadfly, as you can see in this article here. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. Let's get into it.
I was born in Athens, Greece. Were you really?
Yeah, I was adopted when I was a year and a half, so I'm actually a naturalized citizen.
Did you grow up in Far West then when you...
No, I grew up I grew up on the other side of Ogden High.
Okay. So
Okay.
north side of Ogden High.
Just on the other corner on Maryland Street.
You grew up LDS, right?
Yeah.
And but didn't go to college.
I did, yeah.
Okay,
Of
went to
course,
the
yeah, I
University
went
of
to the, I consider myself an alumni. I mean,
What did you major in? What was your major?
I started out in philosophy but psychology, I think, because it was interesting and I thought it was good. I did well in high school with it. Decided, well, it was a little different in college, and so I got on into other things, and I think I went into journalism or something because I like to write.
How long did you do that?
I was in there
for stay in college.
I was in there for a couple of years, and it was a little bit too stressful for me, and I just, everybody wanted to plug all this information into my head, and college just wasn't for me. So I took in maybe 2 years and then decided, well.
Okay, so the first thing we learn here is that he was born in Athens, Greece. Just an interesting detail. I don't know if there's anything to make from that. But then he was adopted by Mormon parents and grew up across the street from Ogden High School in Utah. He was also a member of the LDS Church, and then he went to college in Utah for several years and then dropped out. Well, here's something interesting. FBI, CIA, NSA, BYU. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have long been rumored to be special targets for recruitment in government intelligence and security agencies. I'm sure a lot of you already know that. A 1981 Associated Press news story reported, quote, the CIA does some of its most successful recruiting in predominantly LDS Utah. Then a 2017 book called The FBI and Religion dedicates a full chapter to the connection, calling church members, quote, a natural recruiting ground for agents. And Tracy Walder, a former CIA officer and FBI special agent and author of The Unexpected Spy, said that the rumor was so common internally that by the time she worked for the government, it had become, quote, a running joke that Mormons are what the agency wanted in their recruitment. Here is a CIA document that I found substantiating some of those claims. Okay, in the document it says, Office of Personnel Representatives travel to BYU, Brigham Young University, to recruit and meet with senior officials of the Mormon Church to discuss agency recruitment of church members. Let's keep going to see what George divulges in this now deleted podcast.
Did you go on a mission?
Yeah, I went to Virginia. Mm-hmm.
Virginia?
Yeah.
What mission in Virginia? Not
Virginia,
Roanoke or the
Virginia Roanoke mission at the time.
Really?
Mission in Virginia. I wonder what else is in Virginia. Anyway, I'm sure that location was a coincidence yet again. Also, another fact, the CIA has been known historically to recruit from missionaries, which they say has received some pushback from LDS Church in more recent years. I guess they really didn't appreciate the CIA coming in and infiltrating their community, but that's another story there. For our purposes, in terms of George Zinn, we now have 2 points of possible intelligence recruitment: his time in college and also his years as a missionary. Okay, we obviously don't have documents like, oh, look right here, George Zinn, member of the CIA. But what I will say is that, boy, has he really been everywhere.
But you've been
But I'd go
to
anyway.
every national convention.
I've been to at least 10. But I couldn't, it's interesting. I usually could get into most of the, I could talk one of the delegates into a credential, and they'd let me in.
You've been on the floor of more conventions than most Republicans will in their lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
Who's
yeah.
the most famous person you've got on your...
Now that's a interesting question.
Okay,
I got a lot of interesting people.
Okay.
I had to go to do my thing in the men's room.
Yeah. Okay.
And I thought, well, and I go in and there's Dan Quell in the urinal next to me. I go, holy smokes, here's the vice president. And I thought, well, why wouldn't Secret Service block that thing? I thought,
Right.
wouldn't that be interesting that they let people walk right in?
So you walked through the Capitol, paid your respects to Ronald Reagan when he was laying in state.
Yeah, and they had everything roped off for security reasons. You could only get so far because of everybody walking through that were VIPs. And
Right.
we were sitting next to the cathedral the whole time. And when they came out, I bumped into Henry Kissinger.
No kidding.
I says, I bumped into Al Gore. I said, wow, I'm like a kid in a candy store. Here I am bumping into all these guys.
What president did you meet? I mean,
well, I met
Ronald Reagan was dead.
No, I met Reagan when he came to Hooper.
So Reagan, you met him in Hooper.
I met him in Hooper. We had sack lunches that day. It was fun. Yeah.
That's crazy.
This is insane. Like dinner with Reagan, pissing next to the vice president, sneaking into Reagan's funeral. I don't know how you would do something like that. And then rubbing elbows with Henry Kissinger and Al Gore. That is something. I mean, I know George Zinn said, you know, he was like, I'm really good at talking my way into these kinds of events, but I don't know. And the interviewer actually did try to ask several times, you know, when he started going to all these events and how exactly was he able to sneak backstage. And George basically dodged all those questions, either directly or with a joke.
But when was it you just decided, I'm going to start going to everything? Was it?
I don't know, when my mom kicked me out of the house and wouldn't let me in, you know?
So mom.
No, that's a joke. That's a joke. You got to know that
I mean,
I don't answer questions. I just lollygag around.
Well, so
right? Am I the only one who thinks he's hiding something? You know, it was because my mom kicked me out. That's why I went to all these things. Like, what is that all about? Am I crazy? You know, you tell me if I am, because just looking at.
Yeah, he's not very good at lying, this George guy, especially about when he was mentioning about going to university. There's, I think I did psychology and then I think I did journalism. It's like, well, mate, well, you know, if you don't know what you did in college, you know, you got to know what you did.
Looking at all the evidence, it's much more likely than not that he's an asset, right?
Shoot me, I did it. Shoot me, I did it. And he also was he was on the scene for 9/11, and he called in a bomb threat to not the Boston, but one of the other marathons. He's like clearly an agent. Like, that's a spy. That's a spy. The reason why a dude of any nationality would show up at a whole bunch of major world events like that is because they're a part of organizations that orchestrate world events called intelligence agencies. Like, that's a fucking spy.
He's an effing spy, says Ian Carroll. And once again, when we look at the preponderance of evidence, which is a lot, but obviously nothing like, once again, yes, George Zinn is on the CIA payroll, but the more likely than not conclusion is that either he knowingly or unknowingly has become and been utilized as an intelligence asset. You know, you don't just get to call in a fake bomb threat at a major marathon event and get off scot-free and go back to live your normal life. No, somebody on the inside is looking out for you. And this is my conjecture here coming up, but up to the point of Charlie Kirk's assassination, George was likely more useful to them in the wild than behind bars. The last thing I'll say is this whole ordeal, they're calling it the JFK of our time, has taught me so many lessons in recognizing the ways in which the media colludes with the government to subvert the truth, to basically convince you not to believe your eyes and ears. But newsflash, it's not 1963 anymore. It's 2005. And the people know that there's something going on. We may not know 100% right now, but you better believe we're coming after the truth, and it will come out one day. That is it for me this week.
Yes, there you go, guys. So yeah, a guy called George Zinn. Now, I haven't done a video on Charlie Kirk, but obviously you guys would have heard a lot about it. As you mentioned, it was probably the JFK of our time, whether you agree with what Charlie Kirk was pushing and the aftermath of his so-called partner, Erica Kirk. A lot has to be said about this George guy. The fact that he's, you know, been rubbing shoulders with, I guess, politicians and elites. It's a little bit suspect, and does point again, as one of the guys said previously in this video, that all evidence suggests that he's a spy, and is more useful for them, whoever his owners are, the CIA or FBI, what have you, to be out the field rather than behind bars. But what do you guys reckon? Comment down below. Did you guys know about George Zinn? Is this news for you? I'd like to hear your feedback. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.